So, how are you tonight? Thank you so much for
No,
joining
I'm
me.
I'm good. I'm good. It's hot, of course. I'm good though. How are you? I like the Rocketeer, and I like that book you have in the
Yeah. I think you know that one.
back. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
it's also hot down here in Florida. I'm sure you're surprised to hear. I went for a walk today at about 4 o'clock and immediately regretted the decision of leaving the sanctity or sanctuary of air conditioning.
Sure.
Um, I'm actually somewhat happy that our interview got pushed back a little bit because now I'm
Okay.
going to ask you, what's it like being a Scribe Award nominee?
Oh, right, right. I don't think about it a lot, man, to be quite honest. You know, it's definitely. I understand now when you watch television and actors and stuff and they say, "Oh, it's an honor to be nominated." It really is truly an honor to be nominated because your work is recognized, right? And B, your well, I feel like I am not just recognized with knowledge, but um placed among other really incredible names, and that in and of itself is an honor, and the fact that the book um touched people enough, and they felt that it was good enough to be nominated is a big deal, So I'm kind of happy about that. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if I'm gonna win or anything like that, man. I'm not even thinking about that
Well, I'm about halfway through the book. I
stuff. Okay.
got distracted with real life as like I started it. I read a couple chapters. I'd started a new job, and then I was like, I'm gonna bring the book with me to work, and then like I had a million other things. So it's actually like my nighttime reader before I go to sleep now. So I'm
Nice,
gonna get
nice.
through it. I think I just got to the part where a certain kid was up to no good with some transporters at a his parents' place.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah. So are you liking it so far? Are you?
absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah,
Good.
I
Good.
this
Yeah.
is actually the first in this series that I've read because there's
Wow.
four other ones, right?
Right.
There's
Oh yeah. They're
the Kirk, the
yeah.
Spock,
The Kirk, the Spock,
Picard, and
the
Janeway.
Picard, and Janeway, and they're phenomenal books.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Now I did notice though that two of those books had the same author, right? The same author wrote two books. So that leads me to wonder: are you going to have a second one coming out in this series?
Well, not only that, Una McCormick wrote two, and I'm
Mhm.
blanking on a gentleman's name who wrote the Kirk and the Picard one.
Yeah, I want to say it
Um,
was Goodman.
yeah, that sounds familiar. Um, oh, I should.
Yeah,
I'm
I run
sorry,
a
I'm
website
blanking.
that like tracks all this stuff just because I can never remember it off the top of my head. David A. Goodman.
Yes, David Ager, right? And so there's only three of us that have done
Yeah.
now five books. I've done one. They've done two apiece. I'd love to do another one. Of course, I would love to.
So who would you
Um,
pick up the autobiography for?
well, if I had a choice, and they said, Derek, hey, you can do another autobiography, I would do Data.
Okay.
Because I think people wouldn't expect it, but I think he's a popular character, and I think I would really like to dive or delve deeply into the Soong lineage,
Hmm.
because it seems to me that we've seen a lot of the Soongs going back from 22nd century in Archer all the way well, actually beyond the life expectancy of Data as we knew him. And the Soongs are very, very similar. Even though they're different individuals, they all have a theme of a certain amount of hubris, even arrogance, And Data seemed to have been the individual that broke that mold, And I think that would be something interesting to just take a look at and see like why, a lot of times you say a lot of times people say that the son experiences the sins of the father, you know. And so if you take that idea and work that backwards through the Soon lineage, I think that would be interesting.
That
To see.
yeah, that would be really cool to see.
Right.
Um, So the whole reason I'm doing these interviews, and you're actually the last one, so you're the bow on top of the present. Yes, is because this is my first time going to shore leave.
Oh wow.
And back in 2018, I asked the shore leave people, "Hey, can I come up there as a media guy? Want to present my website to everyone, show them what's out there?" And they said, "Sure." And I said, "Okay, I'm going to get the money together. I got everything ready to go in 2020." And you know, things were
Right.
what they were.
Right.
I finally got everything all lined back up, and I'm ready to go for it. And I saw that Christopher L. Bennett just mentioned on his site that they just posted the program. So I opened that
Mm,
up, and I had been warned that it's going to be like you're going to have to make choices about what you go to.
yes. Yes.
I did not know the scope of the choice that I would have to do. There's like 10 things competing against each other every hour.
Every hour. Yeah. It's a lot of fun. My first shore leave was 2005 when I wrote Alpha and Omega for the Star Trek Strange New Worlds contest. It was in Strange New Worlds 8. So I knew nothing, and I was just like you, man. I was like when I first went, I was competing. I was like, oh, I want to see what this person has to say about writing. I want to see. I want to go to this panel. I want to go to that. I was running like a madman. So but it's a lot of fun. I think one of the things I can say, not to speak for your answer, but I think you'll find a sense of welcoming at Shore Leave, a sense of obvious familiarity, and even though this time it's going to be in a different place than it used to be at the Marriott, and this is going to be in Lancaster, and the Marriott was in um, but the people will all be the same. We're all expecting the energy and attitude to be the same, if not bigger and brighter. So I think we're in for something special.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Not looking forward to the flights because my town's just small enough that our airport,
Mm,
they're like, okay, it's going to be $1,000 round trip, and I was like, well, I want to go, but not that bad. But if I
right.
drive 3 hours to the east, it's like $150.
Oh wow,
So
that's
luckily,
that's a
my
big
sister
difference.
lives on the East Coast, so I'm gonna go spend the night with her, and then she's gonna drop me off in the airport. It's gonna work out fantastic. Yeah.
It'd be
So
good to see you there.
do you have your program already set up for which panels you're gonna be on?
I do. I do. I don't have it. Do I have my phone or anything?
And you have it
I'm not,
memorized, right?
I do. Of course, I'm just an honest guy. No, of course not. But I have about I think eight or so. Let me see. I have about eight or so panels that I'm going to be on, and they're all going to be fun. I'm actually, if I'm correct, I'm actually emceeing as well. One for J.G. Hexor, who of course played General Martok, and I'm also emceeing for the Ladies of Stargate. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
Now, what goes
Uh,
into being an MC for those events?
uh not being an well, I think Paramount not being an ass. Just for me personally, I've done it a few times, and I would say making sure that the audience and of course these celebrities are having a good time, introducing them, and then seeing what they want to do. I will. I've been doing. Well, mean, I'm a big Stargate fan already, and of course I'm a fan. Beyond being an author for it, but I am doing specific homework so that I can ask certain questions. If anyone wants the MC to ask questions, then I can do that and maybe spark some conversation between the fans and the celebrity. Because it's not about the MC at all. The MC's job is to make everyone else okay and feeling good and hopefully keep things moving in a certain way. At least that's my attitude. Hopefully,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I know that different shows do different things with like how those events go on. Um, I've actually only been to probably about two different shows that had that kind of setup for their panels or like
okay.
their main rooms.
Right.
And one of them that I went to was it didn't go very well. But the second one was like a just like a mirror universe of that one where just like everything went perfectly. Like they were energetic, they were talkative, they kept the
Right.
conversations moving.
Right.
They handled the awkward questions from the audience in a an appropriate way. Um,
That's good.
uh, yeah, but those were both at different megacons that I went to. So so
Okay.
looking at your Star Trek output, you've got the two Strange New Worlds stories,
Yes.
which led to the autobiography of Benjamin Sisko,
Yes,
and
sir.
then you've got a fair number of Modifus RPG books that you're associated with. Can you talk to me a little bit about your RPG experiences?
Sure, sure. That was a lot of fun. Jim Johnson, who's the project manager for Modiphius and Star Trek Adventures, he is also, funny enough, well, not funny, but interestingly enough, he is also a Star Trek Strange New Worlds author as well. He was in the anthology Star Trek anthology. And so he's familiar with my work. So what he's been doing is he's been pulling authors from the old Strange New Worlds contest and Star Trek authors. So a few years back, I mean, maybe like 2017, 2018, around there, he asked me if I was interested in contributing to Star Trek Adventure. And I was like, heck yeah, I'd be interested. And initially, it was just he just had just a little bit of work for me, just to do some bylines for the Alpha Quadrant book. And he said you could do anything, but it only has to be like about I think it was like about maybe 3 or 4 sentences. Um, uh, yeah, like 3 paragraphs, and each had to be like 3 or 4 sentences each, something to that effect. So I was like, okay, something interesting and unique. And so what I did was I came up with the last Mayday, or the last SOS from the Enterprise D as it's crashing on Viridian 3, from Star Trek Generations. And so we get to hear that, and we get to hear Riker giving that Mayday, So I thought that was really interesting. And then I wrote another paragraph where like Romulans have been shadowing Enterprise D when it crashed, and I alluded that that may be how they got um, Picard's DNA, and just little things, just gonna drop little things in and stuff. And then from there, I was asked to do the world of the Delta Quadrant. So there's an entire chapter on the Delta Quadrant book for Voyager, on just the worlds of the Delta Quadrant. So I did those worlds. I came up with the worlds to do. I chose, selected which worlds to put in the book. And the attitude was, if a person was in a Voyager museum, what worlds would the curator have put in the museum to show Voyager's journey? And so those were the worlds I put in the book. Then from there, I was asked to do the worlds of Klingon Empire. I did that. I also came up with the Klingon the Klingon, I guess basically secret intelligence, like Section 31 called the Unseen. And I put them in the and then after that, we had the Shackleton Expanse, which was really great. That was done with Kelly Fitzpatrick, Dayton Ward, Scott Pearson, and connecting stories. We all worked together and did connecting stories. I created Species of Shari. And I think the last thing I did was the Discovery stuff, a book for Star Trek Adventures for Discovery. And that was really cool. I got to do some of the technology. I got to write about the Red Angel technology, um, and just talk about the mirror universe a lot in the chapters that I. So a lot of great stuff that I've been allowed to do um, for the Star Trek universe as it applies to Star Trek Adventures. It's really.
Now, have you been pulled in, or should I say, have you tried the game out yet?
Oh yeah, yeah. I've played it. I've played it consistently for about a year, with Jim Johnson and a group of people, and we played our own campaign for about a year. Funny fact, in the beginning of the Cisco book, there's a science officer, um, uh, a senior science officer that is now taking over Jadzia's spot, and he's half Andorian, half Vulcan, and his name is Emil, and that's a character that I actually ran in Star Trek Adventure.
That's
So I
pretty
dropped
cool.
him. Yeah, yeah. So I dropped him in, and I knew all about Amir, and I could have the entire backstory on him. I was like, you know what? Let me drop him into Deep Space Nine. 'Cause even in my original backstory, before I even know I was going to be writing the Cisco book, uh, he was a second officer on the USS Odyssey, and when that got dropped off, when the Odyssey drops off its personnel, I believe that's the last episode of season 2 of Deep Space Nine, if I'm correct. Um, they drop off all their personnel to go find Cisco and Jake and Nog and Quark in the in the in the Gamma Quadrant. Um, he is one of the people that is dropped off, and when he learns that his ship has been destroyed, he's just like heartbroken. But then he becomes a crew, well, part of these Starfleet personnel on Deep Space Nine for a little bit. So,
It's crazy how like characters that you see for just a bit on screen turn into huge
right,
things in the books.
right, right. And he was never really on screen, but and I don't think Star Trek has ever done an Andorian Vulcan, uh, I guess I could say hybrid or matchup, because that's just so diametrically opposed,
Hmm.
from the heat and the cold, But I worked that out for his lineage. Well, it's some fun stuff, man. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that is pretty cool stuff. So I the other book that I have your name associated with for Trek is the Galloping Around the Cosmos.
Oh
There's
yeah,
yeah, there's a whole bunch of other people that are on that one, from my understanding. It's a collection of essays, right?
it's a collection
Uh,
of essays,
yeah,
and,
go ahead
and,
and tell
and
me about your contribution to it.
yeah, it's a collection of essays on how we all first heard of and got into Star Trek.
Hmm.
And so I wrote about my first introduction to Star Trek. I was probably about, I couldn't have been more than like 5 or 6, I believe, after I wrote. And Devil in the Dark was the first episode that I remember watching. And my father at the time, that was back in the day when television sets were these huge monstrosities that had these huge glass tubes, and I'm of an age where I remember that, and uh, television men from certain companies would actually come to your home to repair your television. So my father worked for Zenith, and he was like a regional guy. He did like all of the Zenith repairs in like New York and certain areas of New York. And I remember him working on a television, and he had it on, which I still don't understand why it was on while he was working on it. It was good, but he was working. It was on. It was on Star Trek, and Devil in the Dark was the episode playing. And if I remember correctly, the scene where Spock is trying to mind meld with Porter. And I was just like fixated because I had no idea what was going on, but this man in this blue uniform was obviously in pain, he was talking to this creature. And I think it was a great episode for a kid to watch because when Spock is mind melding, he's using like basically 1 or 2 syllable words, pain and fear, and that's something that little kid can wrap their head around, and then Kirk is talking to him, and I remember that even then I remember I was like, this other guy, Kirk, and they would talk about killing the thing, but then they found out it was a mother. And I was like, oh, well, my mom is cool. So that mom must be cool, And that was my first introduction into Star Trek. And my parents really encouraged my introduction, or encouraged me to watch some science fiction and Star Trek specifically. That was fucked up. And then, that episode doesn't even really show the Enterprise as I recall. And then after that, I remember somewhere down the line, I got to see the Enterprise. And I was like, great, this stuff is cool. So a lot of fun.
So how did you get involved with the collection of essays with the
They
book?
just asked. They just asked me to do it. They were asking Star Trek authors, and I think I had just come off of the Cisco book.
I
Yeah, I think I had just come off of it. like just finished like the second draft, and I was asked, I was like, yeah, sure. I wrote my essay for them.
Yeah, hard to say no to stuff like that when they're asking for that.
Oh,
Now, was that your
oh, oh
first
yeah.
compendium of essays, or do you have other entries out there?
I do have a few other essays. There's a series of books called Outside In. I think one of the first essays I did was there was a Outside In on the Next Generation episode, and I did one on Barkley. And if I remember correctly, the title of the essay is "It's Not Easy Being Broccoli." And I basically spoke about how um, for us, Barkley is the only real normal, average human on the Enterprise. Everyone else is really good looking, really in shape. And here's a guy that has some schisms, he has some phobias, he's got some issues. But I think, well, I know that was done on purpose, but it's also, we identify with that. We identify with the flawed character, not the perfect Riker. I mean, we identify with Riker because we like him. But I don't know how much we actually identify with the perfection of Riker, at
Mhm.
least at that time. And so I spoke about that and how this individual overcoming his addiction to the holodeck and I was really a really fun essay to do. I've also done some essays now. I think about it for Star Trek magazine when it was still called Star Trek magazine. I it's really interesting because one of the essays I did was called "Fear is the Enemy," and that was a essay on Deep Space Nine, which in some ways was the genesis for a lot of the key points in the Cisco autobiography. Because in that essay, what I said was that the real enemy wasn't really the changelings or the Cardassians, or the Jem'Hadar. It was fear. Each species was dealing with fear in a very unique way. The changelings have been hunted, and so their solution to never be hunted again is to control everything. So their fear led them to a place of being dictators, and just trying to literally rule the galaxy. The Cardassians' fear of not being on top and not being who they once were caused them to pillage the Bajorans. So it was just interesting how fear had played such a powerful part in Deep Space Nine, and even in the Federation when the Borg came in Starfleet. So I wrote all about that, and it's one of the I'm very proud of that essay.
Right. Yeah, so you're not just doing writing. I saw on your Twitter that you're also doing some masterclass work. Can you talk about that at all?
Yeah, 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 I can. I'm doing a 6-week class um, on storytelling for sequential art. I'm doing this for the Task Academy, and it's an academy that is not here in the States. It's actually in Dublin. Um, and what's really cool about that is that they asked me to be a master class for the academy. I was like, I'd be happy to. And we're about to go into week 3, 2 classes a week, and it's been a lot of fun because what I get to do is talk about the fundamentals of storytelling and how it applies to comic books and sequential art overall. And there are elements of storytelling that are unique and indicative specifically for comics, but especially in the way I write and what I'm trying to impart to these students is that many elements of storytelling can be applied regardless of the medium, regardless of the genre. Storytelling is storytelling. Pacing is pacing, characters, and characters plot. And once you start to understand these things and learn these things, it should, as a writer, help you to be more versatile, so that you can move from comics to um, role playing games to short stories to script or screenwriting or long form writing. I got my start screenwriting. When I was 16, I wrote my first screenplay. 16, 17, I wrote my first screenplay, and it won an award from the Drama Guild of America. So it was understanding screenplays and that which actually propelled me um, to where I'm at today.
Do you have any work or aspirations to work in the comic book industry?
Heck yeah, yeah.
Right? Like, would you like to work for Marvel? Like, I don't
Would
know.
right, right. So I'll tell you a quick story. Back in the day, and this is like late '90s, early 2000s. Um, there was this gentleman that was teaching a class at the School of Visual Arts where I went, which is one of the colleges that I went. And it was called How to Write for Comics. The individual teaching the class was Denny O'Neill, who is right. I could just say the
Huge.
name. He's huge. He's a legend.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know this. And the first day I sit there, I'm like, that looks good. And so he starts teaching the class, and he's like, "Oh, I'm Denny O'Neill." You know, at the time it was just like 90. So at the time he was like, "Oh, I'm the editor of the Batman titles." You know, I've done this. This is who I. My first comic book that I my first comic book. Yeah, my first comic book that I read was a Adams O'Neill Batman comic. It's nuts. It's been years later. I'm sitting in the man's class, right? So what he did was he not only in the class not only taught how to write and understand comic books, but write for comic books, but how to uh, what you need to be a writer, you know. And what was really fortunate for me is that a lot of people in the class they I don't know they didn't seem that interested. They wanted him to sign books, which he was like, I'm not doing to like the last day, you know. And I didn't even honestly care about that. I just wanted to like learn. And so it became a thing of me asking a lot of questions and him answering a lot of my questions. It almost became, in some ways, for me, a mentorship because at the end of the first year, at the end of the class, I asked him. I said, Mr. Ramil, can I take your class again? He's like, sure you can. I said, but I don't want to pay for it. He's like, oh, you want to order the class? You want to pay for it? He's like, Derek, if you take this class, you have to, you can't pop in and pop out. You have to show up every class. You have to be here. This is not something that you can play with. And he had really taught me well about like what deadlines meant, about what professionalism meant in the industry. And so I was like, I give you my word, if you let me do this, I'll be at every class. And I was. And I sat in the front and it got to a point where he was like, does anyone other than Derek have a question? Because a lot of people would just not ask them, would just not. And I'm like, how many opportunities are you going to have? So I was just like, we had conversations about Batman. We had conversations about the Batman psyche. We had conversations about Frank Miller. We had conversations about Iron Man. I mean, I really learned a lot about writing and a lot about comics. And there were things that it was very interesting. He was saying to me then about being a writer that as I was writing the autobiography of Benjamin Sisko, which is also my first novel, and he would say things like, there are times you're going to be stuck. And you can keep banging your head against the wall, but you're going to be stuck. So you need to go stop, take a walk, go walk around the park. I think he said where he lived, there was like a park nearby, and he would walk, around the park. And this was years ago, And so I was like, that is what he told me. And so that I would leave the house, go for a walk. It clears your mind. So, unfortunately, he's not with us any longer, Well, it's not, I don't even know if that's true. He's still with us. He's just not on this plane,
Hmm.
and he's still teaching me. It's that line from that's the way I feel about the man. It's that line that Tony Stark said about about his father, where he's like, "Oh, you're still teaching me," Denny O'Neill is still teaching me. I took copious notes that I reviewed, and so even though I haven't worked in comics, I definitely understood that I know enough about storytelling, and I understand sequential art and comic book that world so well that I could teach at the very least storytelling and the relationships that are essential in that. And the last thing I'll say about this is I did a 6-page homage Batman comic on my own to Denny and to Batman. And that's it. Well, it was on my site. I'm switching my site, but I'll send you the pages, man. And
Yeah.
it was just about the conversations that he and I had, and I did it with a friend of mine, and my friend is a really great artist, Joshua, and he did everything. He did the pencils, inks, he did everything, lettering, coloring, he did everything, and all I did was, I wrote the script, and it came out. I'm happy with it. I'm happy with the way it came out you know. And of course, you know, Denny never commented on it, but he really he couldn't because it's a DC property. So, but I'm happy with it, and people have told me they liked it.
So on the topic of comic books, are you reading IDW's output lately?
They're killing it, man. And the
They
Star Trek
really
stuff,
are.
right? And
Just this week with the annual that came out, and then I think it was like 23 or 2022, like whatever the most recent issue was, it's got like Wesley's head on it.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
that, like it's the best
they're killing it.
storytelling cliffhangers in both the
Um,
issues, and they lead into each other. And
right.
I was like, that looks like a nightmare of a project for a project manager to have done.
Oh,
But to see the final result is amazing. Like they're really going places, both with uh Cisco, just like why was he kicked out of the temple? Well, there's reasons, and they're getting
there's
there.
reasons. Right,
Yeah.
right, right. Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff happening with IDW. I remember the first IDW things I read was uh well, I've been reading IDW in regards to Star Trek with the 5-year mission.
Hmm.
And I remember like reading like the first page of that, not even like the book, the first page. I'm like, well, this is really good,
Yeah.
and they're killing it. They're killing it. I spoke to the head editor, Heather Entos.
Antos, yeah.
Uh, yeah, and she's phenomenal. She's just lovely, really cool. And she's proud of the work, as rightly so. I mean, they're doing some amazing work at IDW.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
the first thing that I read from them was the Wrath of Khan adaptation, which somehow there hadn't been a comic book adaptation until they got the license of the
right.
movie, and it was like there's adaptations and then there's adaptations, and this one was like it was like a solid comic book. Like it was like they
Mm-hmm.
took the story and they properly adapted it to the medium, because
Mm-hmm.
you see plenty of like movie adaptations, like the Batman ones I always go to, where like
Right.
yes, that's the same exact thing that happened on screen, but like there's no life to it, right?
There's no right, right, right.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really
But
good stuff.
the 5-year mission was that it had just started when I got back to comics, because I took I got away from it all.
We
I
all
took
do.
about
We all
10
do.
years
Right.
of like real life
Right.
stuff, and then they just absolutely killed my wallet with those variant covers they
Yes.
were doing, because they were the travel guide variants, and I'm a sucker
Right.
for those travel posters, the travel guides, the
Right. Right.
like visit Vulcan, blah blah blah, or visit this planet.
Right.
They're having an election, and like such great work.
Have
So
you?
yeah,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry. Have you read Dayton Ward's Vulcan and Klingon Travel Guide?
I have not.
Oh,
I haven't gotten those yet. Yeah.
pick them up. Pick them. He'll probably be selling them at Shirley,
Right. So
and you can get them
the
signed.
way like all these boxes back here, these are long boxes, and they're all filled with
Okay.
like Star Trek comic books. And
What?
The Superman Shield issues, because if you remember back
Right.
in the 90s, they had like there was Action,
Oh,
Superman, Man of
right.
Steel,
Right.
and then
Right.
it was a single story threaded throughout all of them, and the way you kept
Right.
track of it was a Shield number on the front.
Right. Right.
Well, my collector's
Wow.
sense like loves that, so I'm collecting all those. But I've got a ton of Trek books, and the reason I started my book club website is because I was starting to accidentally buy the same book, uh, and I'm like I don't want to waste the money,
Right.
and I think I can like share my love of the franchise and the written portion of it with everyone through the site. But what was the point I was going for here?
It's just a good
That
story.
like yeah. When you go on the internet, you could buy all these books all at once. Like you
Right.
could just get them all. Like it just absolutely get them all. So I decided when I like made the decision, I was going to try to like build a just a collection of all the Trek books, that I would
Okay.
only do it in person. And like the
Okay.
only online stuff I do is my local Goodwill has like an auction site. So like I'm like, okay, but I'm picking it up in person, right? So that
Right,
doesn't
right,
count.
right, right.
So there's a lot of books that you see at conventions. It's mostly the older ones. You don't see the newer ones. We just had a show here in town about 3 weeks ago, and a guy that I had spoken to 2 years prior to that remembered me, and he had
Wow.
brought all of his Trek books from his store, and I bought like 2/3 of the ones he had to get like these giant pallets of them, and they were all the James Blish adaptations.
Oh yeah, those are
Yeah, both
from
the
the Bliss books, right?
yeah, from the original series and the animated ones. So
Right, right,
yeah, I've got all the logbooks now except for like 2 or 3 of the animated logbooks. So, but those logbooks were how I first read, or like I first experienced Trek, because I was cutting
oh,
grass
wow.
for one of my elementary school teachers,
Right,
and she's like, I'll give you these Star Trek books if you cut my yard, and I'll, like the
wow.
kind of tricks that teachers play on you, whether
Right,
you think
right.
you're like, I just got all these books and all I had to do was cut her yard. She's like, I just gave him all these books and all I had to do was have him cut my yard poorly. Like, what's a 12-year-old or a 10-year-old gonna cut
That's
grass for?
fantastic. That's
Right.
fantastic.
Yeah.
That
So
is,
like I'm like the reason I've got like some really big and like obvious holes in the collection is because I'm trying desperately just to make it an experience, right? Like I got
right.
those books at the show.
That's
I
really
got like,
smart.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because you can go on eBay and just be like, $5,000
Right.
later,
And
you
pick it
have an entire
right.
collection.
Right. But to make it an experience, and I'm guessing you never met Dayton before. Or
No,
have you?
the only Trek author that I've met in person is Keith DeCandido, who
Oh yeah,
I met at a MegaCon here in Florida.
Keith is cool. Keith is cool.
Yeah,
But you're in for a treat, man. You're in
yeah.
for a treat with Dayton Ward. David Mack is gonna be there too.
Hmm.
Well, I mean, there's gonna be a lot of Star Trek writers now. Now I think about it. But you're in for a treat. Dayton's funny, and he's a great guy. So yeah, it's gonna be a lot of,
Yeah, like I
a lot of
said,
fun.
I've done a number of these interviews. Dayton was one of them. Last
Oh,
night I
okay,
spoke with
okay,
Kelly Fitzpatrick.
okay,
She
okay.
spoke highly of you as well.
Well,
Um,
Kelly's awesome. Kelly's awesome.
Yes. And I saw that I can't remember whose social account it was. Might have been hers, might have been yours, but you guest lectured for one of her classes.
I did twice. I guess I did twice. She asked me to do it. I was like, sure. And after the first time, the students actually asked for me to come back to do
Ah,
So
that's validation right there.
that's validation. So that was cool. That was a lot of fun. I recently did some work with the American Writers Museum in Chicago on a exhibit on role playing. And ventures as a part in that exhibit, partially because I in that, and Kelly came up for the opening, and so that was really cool to be there with Kelly and for her to see it. I actually the Shackleton book is actually in the exhibit, and it'll be there for a year. So if you're ever in the area, or if anyone's ever in the area of downtown Chicago, go to the American Writers Museum, and that exhibit will be there in Brooklyn. That was fun.
And
It's probably
that's
awesome.
exciting. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
already got like your work in museums,
it's nuts, right?
right?
But I'm thankful. I mean, I'm very thankful. That's a little nuts. Yeah. So yeah,
Scribe nominee, museum items.
right, right.
Yeah,
So
so what's next for you? What do you got coming up?
I'm working on some original stuff. Um, I'm working on this class, of course, which is a lot of fun with the students. I've got some my original stuff coming up that I've been working on. I've got one or two things that I can't think about contracted. Nothing start. I can say nothing started as of yet. I have some. I have a lot of stuff I would like to do. So,
Hmm.
if they would like to have me back. And we'll see. You know, but this year has been a lot. Has been actually. I if I've learned anything is that I think I will always be linked to the Cisco book um, because it is like a almost a continuation of that series 30 years later in many ways, you know. So in my head, I was like, oh, I'll put my all into this, I'll write it, and then I will move to the next project. But that's not the case, you know, because I've been very thankful that, you know, people email me. Had a lady email me and said to me that she used to watch Deep Space Nine with her father, and her father passed away, and she read the autobiography in like 4 hours, and she felt like her father was there reading it with her. And you know, that's I didn't even say to that. That's amazing to hear somebody say that about something that I've written, you know. So I realized that I keep getting emails and stuff like that. So I'm just very thankful to have been the person selected for this, and that people identify with what I wrote.
Right. It's going to be the project that keeps going because it feels like it's not tethered to like the work that Dayton Warden David Mack did with the extended universe that Trek did, where
Right,
you know that's been bookended. Like you know, it had a beginning, it
right,
had a middle, and it had its end. And then like
right.
if you want to read it, go ahead. But like this is the kind of stuff that you'll constantly be able to go back and see, you know, until it's like uh countermanded from the something on screen. But like
Right,
the
right,
way the franchises are going, we're probably not going to see Cisco back on screen. But I
right.
mean, I mean that would be a positive problem though, right? Like if they
I
came back
right,
with more
right.
Cisco work.
I would love that. And I'll tell you, when I got the project, two things uh really stuck in my mind. One was I was talking to someone, and they told me, "Oh, my entry into Star Trek was the autobiographies." And this was like before I could even mention what I was doing, you know. And I was like, "What?" And they're like, "Yeah, I read." They had this individual had read the Kirk's autobiography, and that was the introduction to Star Trek. And also from writing the Star Trek Adventures, people have told me that their introduction to Star Trek has been Star Trek Adventures, the role playing game. So I thought about that, and then I thought, you know, whatever I do with this book, it should be the kind of story and the kind of book that, you know, somebody has never seen Deep Space Nine before, you know, to pick this book up and on the 60th anniversary, find things in this book and be like, oh, that's Deep Space Nine, or oh, this is interesting. Let me watch that really old show, you know, that I have on my, you know, implant in my head now. Deep
Right.
Space Nine, you
Your
know,
hollow chip.
oh, the hollow shit, right? And you know, but that was always the idea, always the plan that this book, if I did it well, you know, I was really hoping that if I did it well, it would have a very long life and maybe even be
Yeah, well, I think that you achieved that goal from every indication
thank
I can see. And you're as you mentioned, you know, it was an honor for to be nominated for that Scribe Award, and you've got some really solid competition in there. But I
oh
really feel that like
man,
you got a good feel for or a good chance to get that one.
I don't know. I mean, it's funny because Dave Mack and I were talking, and Mack was like, "Oh, I thought, you know, I thought, what did he say to me? He said it on Twitter too. He was like, "Oh, I thought that I had a shot at this, but now I saw that your book is," and I'm like, "Are you kidding?" You know, I'm like, I first I'm like, "That's really kind, David, bro. Are you kidding?" I mean, you know, David Mack's been doing a lot of stuff for a
Hmm.
long time, you know. So it's gonna be it's anybody's game. You know, these are all heavy hitters. Every name in that category and every name in the scribe you know, and you know, you don't get it. If I don't, I'm happy I've been nominated. You know,
Right, just happy to be there,
I'm
right?
right. I'm happy to be there with all these cats. So, you know, hey, it's already a win, you know?
Right, right. Yeah, that's a fantastic way to look at it. Like the winning is just being present. Yeah.
Yeah, man. You know, I mean, because getting there says that you've done a lot of work to get there, you
Hmm.
know, and there's still work to do, you know, but you got to that place in the job. I was saying to someone that, you know, I don't think any of us that are writers or even artists, especially specifically writers, we're all on a path, and we all have like a similar goal to get published or to have our work seen by eyes outside of our family, and to say something. But there's like Stephen King, he's ahead of me on that journey. And there may be people that I'm ahead of, but we're all on that same path. Regardless of where you are, you're all on the same path, if that makes any sense. And I think there's a
Right.
solidarity in that. That's the way
Yeah.
I think.
So are you counting down the days until they announce that? Or are you trying to just
No, man,
let it
no,
happen as it
I'm not big.
happens?
No, no, I'm just not even because I was actually gonna. I said to myself, I don't even want to know like when it comes out or anything. And then somebody posted, oh, it's gonna be like the same day of showing. I'm like, I didn't even want to know like the day and time because then you don't have to worry, you don't have to have it in your head. But now I know now
Oh,
that it's gonna happen. It's like I think it's like the first or second day of showing. So it's like so I got other stuff going on anyway. I got this class that you know my thing right now is I got students, and that's really important to me. So, and then I'll have shore leave, and then I'll have my MC responsibilities and stuff like that. And so I'm not gonna try and think, you know, whatever happens, happens.
right, right. So, as I said, this is my first shore leave. Never been to one
Right.
before. I've never flown out of state for a convention before. I've never been
Oh
to a Star
wow.
Trek convention before.
Wow. This is
As a
great.
first person or a first timer for all those three
Yes.
things, what would you suggest for me to know or to do for this show?
Oh, honestly, do you have like see like I got this,
Uh-huh.
and this is a metal flask water bottle. But I got this because of my times at conventions, so I can carry this around with me, fill it up, because you're going to be talking to people, you're going to be, and they have like, they should have water stations. But if you have like just a bottle of water, that will empty. But something like this, you can always take with you, carry it around, it'll stay cold or hot or whatever you need. I would suggest something like this. And
Okay.
that's a real suggestion. You're gonna get your steps in if you're one of those people that count steps in your watch or whatever. Um, there you go. Right,
Yep.
right. There you go. Um, uh, I would say people are very friendly. Just I had someone at a convention. I think it was WinterCon or one of the conventions I was at. They said on social media or something. They said, "Oh, I saw you. I wanted to say something to you, but you were so busy." I was like, "What? Say something to me?" Because you were at that convention. That individual was at that convention. I was at the convention. Who knows what's not going to happen? So speak to people. Step to them, say hello, just introduce yourself and all that stuff. And everybody's cool. Um, uh, get up early, map out where you want to go because a lot of these things will happen at the same time or
Right.
different floors. I don't know how it's going to be in this hotel. So those are the kind of things you're going to want to map out and say, maybe I'll go, maybe if two of these things are at the same time, maybe I'll go to the beginning of this one and stay for like half an hour and jet to the other, like those kind of things. Other than that, yeah, are you staying at the hotel?
Unfortunately, no. I
Uh,
decided to wait about a week after they announced the room block, and man, those things went fast. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So hopefully the
Yeah.
hotel believes them when they say we have people coming, like next time. Because like my two hopes for the future of the show is that they'll be able to get their normal date back because like
Right.
they had to move it forward because of the unfortunate location change. And then the hotel gave them like the minimum room block apparently, which like build your credentials with them and show them that you can fill it, and then next year maybe they can double it, maybe they can triple it. Who knows? But
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm
that's.
hoping this will be a big turnout. I'm hoping.
I mean, me too. I'm hearing a lot of talk about the show. Yeah, my hotel is about 20 30 minutes to the west, I believe.
Okay.
So
That's good.
my travel agent, aka my wife, made all the arrangements for me because
Nice.
I just get overloaded when you're like, okay, if you select this vehicle, for your rental, it's going to cost you like $100. If you select
Right,
one that
right,
looks
right,
kind of like that, it's going to be $500. And I'm like,
right,
oh, I
right,
don't want to make
right.
that mistake and spend money I don't need to on something
Absolutely.
that like I just didn't need. So
Right.
she loves doing it, and I was like, look, I'll pay you. So she made some spending money on it. So she's going to go buy
Yeah.
a movie or something
Uh,
with the money she made.
what I love, I don't know if this is going to be a new a venue, but what I've always loved about the Showleaf conventions of the past is that they're not like huge like New York Comic Con or San Diego Comic, and they're not like tiny, tiny. They are a really good size. It has a feel that is almost like an intimacy because what happens is with the really huge con, so there's just so many people going on. But over the first and second day, you start to see a lot of the same faces, and people are like, oh, I liked your panel. Oh, and you're like, hey, thanks, or you'll be for me, whenever I'm in like an elevator, I talk to people. I occupy like quiet spaces and quiet moments by talking and jabbering. So I'd be like, oh, how's the con going? Or I remember one time I was in the elevator with three Cylons, three guys dressed up like old school Battle South Africa Cylons, and none of us were talking. I'm like, this is awkward. We got to start talking. So we all started talking and taking selfies. So it's a really fun time. Um, there should be a lot of cosplay, hopefully. You know, so it should be a lot of fun. Yeah, I think you're gonna have a good time.
All right. Well, thank you very much for talking to me, Derek. I really appreciate the time that you spent with me.
Oh man, it's my pleasure. It was a joy speaking with you. And definitely, I don't know, just wherever I am, just come by. I know on that Friday, they have what's called the Author's Corner, like at 10
Yeah,
p.m.
meet the pros
Meet the
thing.
pros, right?
Yeah.
So I'll be at that, and I'll be at some other panels, which I can tell you really quick. 'Cause I did look them up. I will be at the juggling multiple projects panel, creating three-dimensional characters, reimagining Sherlock Holmes. I recently did a Sherlock Holmes count. The Cisco Day, Discovery's 5-year mission, Writing Brain versus Editor Brain, another DS9, the autobiography of Cisco, and collaborators. So, got a pretty book schedule. So, let's hang out and I'll definitely sign your book.
Well, I'll
Thanks.
definitely bring it with me.
Please, please do, man. All right.
All right, man. Have yourself a lovely evening.
Thank you, man. It's a joy speaking with you. You take care.
All right. Have a good night.
Okay.